You are listening to the daily homily for Magdala in the Holy Land.
Jesus summoned the 12 and began to send them out 2 by 2, and gave them authority over unclean spirits. He instructed them to take nothing for the journey but a walking stick, no food, no sack, no money in their belts. They were, however, to wear sandals, but not a second tunic. He said to them, "Wherever you enter a house, stay there until you leave from there. Whatever place does not welcome you or listen to you, leave there and shake the dust off your feet in testimony against them." So they went off and preached repentance. The 12 drove out many demons, and they anointed with oil many who were sick and cured them. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
Have you ever gone on a trip? Well, you just came from France, and you didn't pack anything. You didn't prepare a suitcase and clothes and things. Jesus said, go out and don't take anything. Just one stick, one tunic, no money, no food, no sack, carrying a sack. So they travel light. They could go on, walk on, what do you call that, carry on. They didn't have much to carry on. It's interesting how Jesus sent them out. First of all, he took them out of their home so that they leave their nice room behind, their kitchen behind, their land, their garden, their neighbors, and they had to leave. And now he's sending them out with nothing. What's going on? What's happening to them? It's very interesting. What's the process that all of that strategy accomplishes in their hearts? We're very attached to our comfy zone, and we're very good at building comfy zones. And when we're taken out of our comfy zone, we lose the spaces for our protection from the climate, from the weather, from others. And now we're walking through the world. And now they're sent out without Jesus. Not really, because he's with us on the way. But this is interesting. It's an interesting process of detachment. And at the end, we come into life at the very beginning with nothing, and we leave with nothing. So this is a discipline that trains the human spirit and sets up people in society that live like this. And this is the meaning of the vow of poverty that religious make. But that's a vow. There's also the virtue of poverty, because a religious could make a vow and not live the virtue. But everybody can live the virtue without having a vow. How do I live the virtue of poverty? The detachment from things, the reliance on things. I had an extraordinary conversation with a gentleman today on the way here. He drove me here from Jerusalem. And he's a very blessed man. And at one time, he was with his wife on a mission, and sometimes it was tough, and he'd tell his parents, and they'd put a couple of $100 in the account they had, and they were able to continue providing. He told me a story about them. For a period, they were in India and Nepal, and they understood they had to go without money. This is a story I heard today, like 4 hours ago, or less. And they always had enough. Sometimes they were offered more than they needed, and they didn't take it. It's interesting. And obviously, let's say a young couple starting out with a family and they have little babies, they need to provide for the children. They need to provide for the rainy day. That's part of their responsibility. But the person going out on the mission is a different situation, and there's a different role they have. They're not looking after little babies. They're giving a testimony to the gospel. But we can all live that. And that's precious. And yesterday we had the gospel of rejection. Jesus was rejected in Nazareth. And today he tells them, you will be rejected. And we remember today the saints, Paul Miki and his companions. It's an extraordinary story about 400 years ago of martyrdom. St. Francis Xavier had just touched Japan very briefly. And within a couple of decades, there were 60,000 Christians baptized in Japan. And obviously the authorities were probably rattled by this, couldn't control this phenomenon that was mushrooming. And they installed an incredibly systematic program of persecution. And for a couple of hundred years, there were no priests in Japan. And when priests went back again over 100 years ago, they found a flourishing Christianity. And people like this, Paul Miki and his companions, there are many ways to give witness. We're not all going to be asked to give this witness of blood. Not everybody is asked to make a vow of poverty. But the virtues, the virtue of poverty, the virtue of witness, the virtue of total dedication to God. And we all need those witnesses. I was touched by this man today and his story. And we're touched by Paul Miki, and that's the great value of witnesses in our lives. And many people won't ever read the gospel, but they'll read your life. They'll read this couple coming from France to look after the house to host pilgrims here in Tiberias. People know about the story, the whole family knows. They're coming to an area that people would say it's not the right time to go there. And yet they come. This is all part of the leaven of the gospel, detaching us from our securities and putting our focus on God. And then somebody like Paul Miki rejoices over his suffering, over his day of martyrdom, like most of the martyrs have done, because it's the culmination of a whole path of spiritual growth. It's never improvised. It's prepared by divine providence, as is your life, prepared by divine providence to give witness in a circle of people. God knows how many will be touched by this. We have no idea of the extent of one kind word spoken, of one word of forgiveness and reconciliation delivered, of one act of forgiveness accepted. This is amazing.
Thank you for joining us today. If you want to learn more about Magdala, follow us on YouTube and on Facebook.